Good afternoon. This is the meeting of the Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant Board on October 8th of 2024. And I call the meeting to order right now. First item on our agenda is a discussion of our pilot payment to the town. And just for background, we had a conversation about it last meeting, I should say. And looked at how we do this relative to how other MLPs do it, considered whether we might want to change the idea at that point. The general consensus was that we did not, but during Tyler's research turned up something that was not new to me, which is that there is a state law requiring us to pay a pilot. And we've asked the Light Plants Council, Deidre Lawrence, to join us today to tell us, to sort of interpret that statute for us so that we'll know that we're doing what we're required to by law. So unless there's something else we need to say, I'll just call on Deidre and take it away.
So one thing that would be helpful is I don't know what statute was referenced, but and it would be helpful if I could find out which one was being discussed.
Okay, it certainly would.
The light plant does not pay real or personal property taxes, either in your own city or town or in another city and town that you operate or own plant in. So, the state's highest court has ruled on this issue. The DPU has. And I think what characterizes what light plants, the kinds of payments light plants are making on an annual basis, are properly referred to as voluntary payments from unappropriated earned surplus. A pilot is a payment in lieu of a tax. So if you're not taxable, you're not making a payment in lieu, nor are you required to have an agreement. As far as I know, I don't know if you guys have an agreement. I would say it's unenforceable if you do. And that's because Chapter 164 is pretty clear on what you can put in your rates. And I think one thing that I've noticed over the years, because clients don't tell me everything they're doing. So, I won't run into something unless somebody has a problem suddenly or a question like this. So I don't know what HMLP's current situation is. But I think the thing that gives me grief is the idea of agreeing to pay something before you know whether or not you had some earned surplus that year.
Mhm.
So looking at this right now, 164.
Yeah, so this is from Tyler's email, and here he asks, is there a way we can ask what this is requiring
That's
us
a
to do?
cooperative. Okay, so this is referring to a municipal light plant cooperative,
Oh,
not a
and
municipal light plant.
that's
So
different
the
from us.
cooperative statute would be applicable to E&E. If they owned brick and
Oh,
mortar facilities, they say E&E someday gets into building a solar facility or a battery facility. They have to make a pilot.
uh,
Now, that would come out of the cost of the project, but that's completely different than a municipal lighting plant. And it makes sense because the courts have also ruled that municipal light plant property is ultimately municipal property. So the town doesn't
oh,
tax itself, right? So yeah, that's a cooperative. So that's a different thing. That's like when a bunch of light plants get together and decide to form a cooperative, sometimes for a specific purpose. Um, yeah, I've always wondered too. I don't know because I don't really have any work involving them, but like if MWEC has to pay out in Stony Brook, I bet they do. But anyway, so yeah, light plans don't. And so, you know, unfortunately, a lot of things spread around to light plants through their managers and then to their boards. And we affectionately call them urban legends in our office of, you have to make this payment every year. And that's absolutely false, because if you had a terrible year and you found that for whatever reason you didn't have excess earnings, there would be nothing to pay over to the town, whether you want to call it a pilot or an in lieu payment or a voluntary payment. That if the money's not there, it's not there. And the next issue is you can't be forced to turn it over to the town, either. The courts have already ruled on this as well as the DPU, and they've said it's the board's decision. And there are lots of options. You could keep it for cash on hand. You could refund it to the ratepayers because it's ratepayer money. You decide what the best use of it is, and you could say we're going to make a voluntary payment to the town and give them the excess, which is perfectly fine, but it is not mandatory at all. And I think it's important for boards to understand that, because I don't know if they've been, getting the urban legend end of things for years. So I don't know if you have any particular questions about it, but I'm happy to answer them.
Well, thank you. That clears that up. And I have to say that uh, until we found this statute that we didn't know how to interpret, I was under the impression that it was voluntary. And so I don't know, Mike and Tyler, if there's anything else that you would like to revisit about the pilot. I will say that our policy, which I can put up, or unless you have it handy. Um,
I can,
hang on a
the one
second.
I sent, right?
Yeah, the one you
Yeah.
sent.
Yeah, I
and-
have it.
Okay. This is
Why can I never find it when
oh, I got it. Hang on a second. Okay, can you see that?
yeah, we can see that.
So our desire, we discovered that, we didn't, there was a document that laid out the most recent the agreement that the light plant made with the town, which really, it was a more of a promise than an agreement. And this is it. But there was no official board policy on it. So this is being proposed as our board policy, which is just a recognition of what is already. But what I can see is that one of your concerns, Deidre, was that this agreement does stipulate a minimum payment that HMLP will make to the town of $450,000 per year from surplus funds. I suppose you could say, well, if there isn't that much in surplus funds, we're not going to hand it over on a given occasion. But I don't know if this kind of wording gives you pause.
Well, I think that the second to last sentence in that first paragraph, it says if HMLP does not have sufficient surplus funds, no payment will be made.
Okay.
If it is your policy, then it's your policy. I don't know that this policy would be binding, for instance, on subsequent boards. And it,
I'm sure
doesn't
it's
have the
not.
force of law, but it is a perfectly legal way to calculate it. The illegality would come if you had to turn around and take it from what we call, on an accounting standpoint, from above the line. It would have to be from below the line. So say you only have 250 remaining below the line after you close your books, then that's what they get if you vote on that. So I mean, I might want to say, I'm looking at this subject to the board vote. You know what I mean?
Sub-
I don't know, something like
Subject
that.
to a board decision that
Yeah,
HMLP
yeah.
does not have sufficient surplus funds, because that's vague and leaves it open to saying, okay, well, we have $450,000, but we need it for something else.
Right, exactly. And when it says that the minimum payment, you'll make, um I want to make sure that you aren't viewed as obligating yourself. But then again, this isn't a contract, it's just a policy, and you could vote to throw it out at that very meeting if you found that you had less than that and there was a dire need to direct it elsewhere.
Mhm.
I think you always have the flexibility for that.
Okay,
should we change the name of it to a voluntary payment to the town rather than a pilot, where it's not a pilot?
Please do. That would be like, that would make me so overjoyed.
okay.
We'd be such trailblazers.
Let's make Deidre overjoyed. I like that idea. Um,
Yeah.
Deidre, I just want to say I thank you very much for helping clear that up. I'm not surprised I misinterpreted that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. That chapter is poorly written and confusing, which is why I have a job.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the board, would you like to vote to adopt this policy with the one change of the name to from what now I've forgotten what the name of it is at the moment.
HMLP's voluntary
Voluntary payment
to
to the town. Yeah.
and we want to add in a line stating that it's upon the board's vote, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, so the minimum payment that HMLP will make to the town is $450,000 from surplus. Well, we want the whole thing to be subject to a board vote, right?
Yeah, you could put it at the very end where it says June of the following year. The foregoing is subject to a board vote, HMLP board vote. Yeah.
Okay, so we will make those
And
two
then the
changes.
foregoing just sweeps everything that came before it
Right.
into there. So you could say, not 450 this year.
So does that, setting that policy, does that then make it required that we vote each year on the voluntary payment to the town? I think we need to change the text of the policy as well. So that we would need to vote every year on that, because
I think you
historically we
would.
haven't.
Yes. And I think that makes sense because you would want to make sure that your financial position supported a surplus payment, let alone of that amount.
Okay.
You know, I
That's-
think the main understanding should be that this is our goal.
Mm.
And this is the way we've come up with a way to calculate it, because that seems to be the municipal light plant industry standard. And I think, whatever method you pick is fine. But I don't think you should put yourself in a corner if you did want to use, if say you had a really big surplus and you wanted to use it for rate relief, or you think it's a better idea to pay down if you had debt, that's your decision. So you're in the best position, according to the DPU and the courts, to decide how that money would be used in the best interest of the ratepayers.
Okay, maybe we should just ask if the staff could redraft and bring it back next time, so we know exactly what it is we're voting on.
I can do that, yep.
That would be good.
And just to be clear, I think we should definitely state how we're coming up with the 0.0025 cents or dollars per kilowatt hour. It's kind of indexed to what other light plants are doing, what other light plants are calling a pilot. I think we need to be transparent on how we're coming up with that value, so that anybody looking back on history can see how it's changed, or how the boards have reflected and moved that needle, so to speak.
Well, that would be very important, because of course, at our last meeting, we had to figure that out with institutional knowledge as opposed to referring to something that's written down. So that would be
I
very
think
good.
that's part of the statement, right, is we said
Yeah, it's in there.
we spelled out where that 0.25 comes from.
Right, but we're not going to call it a pilot, so I think we need
Yeah,
to.
we'll change the wording on it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
At the meeting where we were discussing this in the spring, some members of the public wanted to understand why we were making a payment like this. So I wonder if maybe we want to add something to that, to explain why we make such a payment when we can. I mean, I'd be willing to just draft up one sentence that we could fly by you guys next month. I mean, to me, I feel like the ratepayers, when they ask that question, should probably put on their taxpayer hat and think about all of the roads that our heavy trucks drive on and how they get paid for, But way more importantly than that, the cost of the very competent and extensive emergency services that we have in our town for our workforce that is engaged in extremely dangerous work, having that resource available to us, I feel like we owe a part of the cost of helping to support those services that the town provides, that the light plant uses. So that's my reason for thinking we should make a voluntary payment. I don't know, Tyler, Mike, does that sound good to you or something along those lines?
Yeah, that lands well with me too.
Yeah, no problem here.
Okay, I'll just write up a little sentence and then we'll bring it back at the last meeting and vote. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Dieter. You were extremely helpful. We really appreciate it. And we knew looking at that statute, we knew we were missing something. So we really appreciate
Yeah,
having your
great.
help with that.
Glad I could help. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Deirdre.
Deirdre.
Bye.
Bye.
Great. Okay, I want to welcome Justin and Paxton, who I assume are from, I know Justin is from Abode. Paxton, you're
Paxton,
from
yep.
Abode as well.
Paxton is-
Correct.
Want to welcome you to our meeting to talk about heat pump rebates. And I think that our Mike Reeve, our board member, is going to have some questions and we'll have a little discussion. I'll just ask, I'll just ask you to, I forgot to ask Deirdre to do this. Before you speak, please tell us your name and your address, which is required by Massachusetts state law. So that's why I have to ask you that. Sorry. So Mike, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. We felt it was important for Abode to come in and just give a quick summary of how the program is going, what your thoughts are, what can we do better, and specifically with regards to some of our customers at HMLP that have not been afforded rebates for one reason or another, and how we're really policing to make sure we're doing the right thing and achieving the right goals overall as we all move towards further electrification of the town of Hingham.
Yeah, happy to jump in here and kind of talk about the overall program goals, some of the situations that we've stepped into, and then I'll also pass off to Paxton, who manages the day-to-day. But Justin Bates, 313 Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm the program manager for our municipal light plant programs. We manage 10 MLP programs across the state. We touch on both kind of electrification and actually I'll use electrification as a umbrella term for heat pumps. We also manage weatherization programs. We talk about everything from heat pump water heaters, lawn appliances, induction stoves, all the special stuff that goes into a home to get somebody from a reliance on fossil fuel-based systems to electric systems. So HMLP, I think the direction, and Tom, I'd also welcome your input here. I think moving in a great direction. We have a lot of conversations with Hingham residents, HMLP customers that, so I'll even take a step back. So in the HMLP world, Abode offers a few different services. And one of our kind of the key services that we do offer is our decarbonization consultations, or our electrification consultations, where we are helping a customer who comes to us at a variety of different touch points, whether they're just considering electrification, considering heat pumps, maybe they're working with a contractor, maybe they have some quotes or proposals, or maybe they're coming to us kind of post-install, wanting to think through some of the ways that their system is operating, either the way they expected or not the way they expected. So we're really trying to bridge a customer's experience from this kind of amalgamous and just in idea of electrification to actually installing some sort of technologies in the home, right? And that's we have specialists on our teams that have kind of decades of HVAC experience, both in the Mass Save program as contractors, electricians, kind of weatherization installers, auditors, and in the kind of behind the scenes, we're constantly trying to create a more streamlined experience for folks trying to electrify. So we have in addition to those decarbonization consultations, which offers the first step into that conversation, we have a participating contractor list, which offers at Paxton, we had 25 to 30 contractors in the Hingham area that install electric technologies, heat pumps. We have a quote comparison tool, which allows a customer to submit proposals that they're receiving from contractors, comparing their COPs, their HSPF values, their operation within that home based on historical fuel usage, based on that system's efficiency. We have a post-install quality assurance process where customers are submitting, contractors and customers are submitting kind of what's called an IQA form, in which we are then evaluating to make sure that that IQA form has the necessary documents, that it fits within the HMLP program, that it is a quality install, right? There's a few indicators that we look to make sure that's a well-installed system. There's a few other touch points along the way, but that's kind of how a boat interacts with the HMLP program, outside of just providing programmatic direction, answering questions, giving insights into the kind of industry and in a fast-paced and fast-moving electrification world. We try to act as a tether to all of the different services and offerings and ideas out there. I think
Justin,
yeah.
what you mentioned, you're working with 10 other munis.
Yeah.
How does Hingham's uptake rank against those other? Are we seeing enough people come through the program? In other words, do we need to promote it more, or do you feel things are ticking along nicely? What's your thoughts there in terms of the adoption and using the services that Abode offers?
Yeah. And Michael, it's a great question. It's always difficult to compare MLPs because they're just different. There are different realities on the ground. I think we see in our highly successful MLP programs a desire to mirror their offerings after mass save. So offering some sort of whole home rebate, offering a robust whole home rebate, I will say, offering kind of weatherization incentives. And I would say, and Paxton, again, I'll look to you. I wouldn't, I'm looking up actually some data on the back end right here. I would say Hingham ranks in kind of the middle volume wise of installs in our MLP programs. I think that they're, even in the most high performing MLP spaces, there's always a chance to do more work to promote the programs more, to get more folks in the door.
Just
Especially
a
given
question,
yeah.
do you look at the volume relative to population size or relative to meters? You know, because we have, a population 22,000, so I don't know how we would compare with a larger town or a smaller town, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Laura, I'm happy to look into that. Provide something.
I think I'd say we're interested in the rate of adoption.
Yeah.
Based on our population.
And I'll maybe Pax and I will take that offline with Tom to get that specific numbers on meters.
That would be great.
If you want to look for population, we can definitely give a kind of a MLP average of where everybody's sitting. I will say that I think you bring up a good point, or at least reference kind of a good point. We're really starting to turn our focus to ensuring installs. And as goofy as that might sound, right, we're in the business of making sure that people feel comfortable with the electrification journey, feel comfortable with heat pumps, talking to a contractor, evaluating proposals. But at the end of the day, how you all are judged, how we are judged, should be how many customers go from that conversation to an install. So we're really trying to refocus on tying customers' rebate data into consultation data. So seeing the themes, the patterns that bring somebody from a consultation to a installed system, thinking through reasons why folks are running into barriers, whether it be knob and tube, whether it be maybe it's the home's status, weatherization status or insulation status. It makes the heating load too large, and the system would be too expensive to make sense against a non-delivered fuel, right? So we're kind of in this process of making sure that we're not just helping a customer, but we're also creating outcomes. So Laura, I think part of that information that we can send over to you is what is the percentage of uptake of our services, or of heat pumps after our services there.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So I understand that we've had some ratepayers that haven't been able to get rebates or have been disqualified for all or part of the rebate. And I'm curious, when I look at the major reason in my mind for going with a rebate for a heat pump is to get people off of oil and gas and propane and electrify them. So I'm curious, what is the bar for that a board or light plant has set in terms of when somebody will get a rebate or not? What would disqualify them from a rebate when, you know, at least some of the situations I've seen, they seem pretty valid to me. In terms of the heat pump is cold weather rated. I think specifically one ratepayer was denied a rebate because they didn't replace the indoor air handler because their current one was working perfectly well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we use the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership's cold climate air source heat pump list.
Right.
That's the kind of qualified product list that we refer to. It shows rated temperatures from 95 degrees all the way down to 5, sometimes even into the negatives. And a system's appearance on that NEEP cold climate air source heat pump list signifies that it has a certain capacity maintenance, meaning the system is able to ramp down, or when the temperature is lower, the system is able to keep the capacity at a certain point, usually above 70% there, from a 47 to a 5 degree temperature range. It's looking at the different efficiency values. So whether it be SEER, whether it be HSPF, there are certain criteria that a system has to hit to be deemed a cold climate air source heat pump. And Michael, I think you bring up a good point where we're seeing a lot of people get creative with how they want to apply heat pumps in their home. We're seeing self-installs and MLP programs. We're seeing folks trying to kind of retrofit existing systems that may have an air handler or condenser. I think the specific system that you might be referring to there, we had a woman working with us that had an existing air handler in their home. And they were looking to keep that air handler as it was fairly new, and just swap out that condenser. And as noble of like a kind of sustainability motivated, cost motivated, it makes a lot of sense there. The tough thing for us is that these systems are specifically paired between a condenser and an air handler, right? So AHRI, which is a database that manufacturers submit their efficiency data, their all sorts of different kind of measurements of system performance. If a system pairing, so again, condenser and air handler, don't have an HRI number, there's no way for us to evaluate a system's criteria or efficiency criteria, efficiency data. It needs that manufacturer provided information for us to say this is a cold climate air source heat pump or this is not. When there isn't a pairing in existence in that HRI database, we have no kind of indicator of that system's performance. And that's
so that's a laboratory certification that pairs equipment from usually the same manufacturer, an outdoor cold air source heat pump, for example, with an ECM motored fan indoors. You're never going to have all the potential fans, air handlers tested in a laboratory situation with a cold weather outdoor condenser. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But if somebody in all honesty goes out and buys something on your NEEP list that's cold weather related by a major manufacturer and has it professionally installed, they've gone from oil to electricity heat pump to put that heat into the air handler of their choice in their home. So surely they should at least qualify for a partial rebate, and maybe the other half of the rebate or the other part of the rebate, at which time they put the new air handler that has been tested on your list. But I think, I mean, I agree in principle with what you're doing and your philosophy behind it, but in practice, I see a disconnect.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Michael. I think sometimes we have to think that just because it is a heat pump doesn't mean that it will always perform with that high efficiency nature that we have, that heat pumps are able to operate at, right? When you install a condenser to a non-paired indoor unit, there is a whole host of things that will impact the efficiency of the system, right? We could have a condenser that is a variable speed condenser, so it is able to modulate. That modulation is what gives that heat pump that high efficiency nature, and an air handler that is a single speed.
Understood.
function.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a cost to that equipment that the homeowner can make that decision on how much they invest in the efficiency of the system. But the bottom line for me is the fuel source. And we're working very hard at HMLP to go to an all renewable carbon-free fuel source. So if the end user has less efficient equipment than they could have, you know, that's entirely up to their business model in terms of how much they're willing to invest in a heating system and insulation, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But if they've switched fuel and they have a cold weather rated heat pump that is producing the heat, the efficiency of the system, it really doesn't matter if it's using wind or solar power. The economics work for the homeowner, but we can't force them to go with the most efficient system if their budgets do not allow that.
And I would say that there's a large number of heat pumps on that NEEP cold climate air source heat pump list. Folks can choose from a wide variety. What I would say to that, again, just because it's a cold climate condenser, or that condenser in the correct pairing would be a cold climate heat pump, doesn't necessarily mean that a condenser and an air handler always make a cold climate heat pump, right? That pairing may be less efficient than electric resistance heating, right? Which is
less efficient?
It could, in a lot of cases, right? I couldn't tell you if it's less efficient because there is no efficiency
you've not
data.
tested it. But
Well,
you can certainly point that out to the end user.
Yeah.
So, Mike, can I ask you a question? Is sort of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say is that you think that, and I know this comes up a lot where people have existing air handlers, and you're suggesting that if somebody were to attach a cold climate heat pump that's off the manufacturer's list to that existing air handler, that because of their step in the right direction and away from fossil fuels, perhaps they should get a partial rebate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they may decide to do it in stages, right? They may decide to look at, okay, I will do the outside condenser the first year, look at how much my electric bill goes up, look how much I feel the efficiency of the system is, even though there's no numbers you can go to and look up tables or talk to the databases or however you come up with those numbers. And then the next year, they may well decide to replace the indoor unit with maybe part of the rebate they get for the outdoor unit.
I just gonna,
There's a moral part to this, and it's very much where that fuel to produce that heat comes from. And yeah, I agree. We should try and point our customers in the right direction. But I think we can only go so far when you get into these complicated retrofits in homes, especially with heat pumps that work best at lower temperatures of delivered heat. But it's still a BTU of heat, whether it's coming from an oil, a gas, a propane, or a heat pump through electricity.
Paxton, I think you were going to say something. Could you
yes.
just
I-
State
and
your
I
name and
didn't-
address, please.
Yes, Paxton Halsell, 80 North Washington Street, Norton, Massachusetts. I think Mike brings up a lot of fair points here, and I do just want to take a step back and highlight that. So the NEEP qualified product list is very similar to the HP QPL, which is used by Mass Save. So it's a Mass Save qualified product list. So basically, most of the efficiency criteria that is used by the NEEP the NEEP qualified product list is going to mirror the Mass Save HP QPL. So that's more or less a statewide program, and there are some standards there. So I just wanted to highlight that a lot of the similar requirements that we're going by and what we're using is kind of on a statewide level. And I do understand the point of just the cost, and these, in many cases, these systems are like basically buying a new car or even a down payment on a home. But I would say that HMLP has done a great job to offer services such as the quote comparison tool to allow customers, similar to a consultation as well, to allow customers to basically find a system for them that might not cost as much, but might perform just as well as any other system. As Justin said, I would even say there, yeah, thousands of systems on the NEEP qualified product list. And we see a range of contract totals that, from one project to the next that are basically getting at the same thing, the same sizing requests and requirements by the customer. They might vary in $15,000 or more in the same, 3 quotes or 4 quotes or 5 quotes from contractors. So it's really up to the customer, to make a decision and read the eligibility requirements. I think it is unfortunate, but I do think there has to be some sort of standard that is just established that customers must, and contractors likewise have to follow. And I think that's also, beyond the customer interaction side, that is also what Abode is doing and helping with in the marketplace, is kind of uplifting those standards and those requirements, because that's kind of what is driving a new understanding and familiarity with heat pump technology. If this was 20 years ago, a lot of people might not have the same experience they're having today with heat pump technology. Often it would be more costly, closer to electric resistance heating. There not as much of a delineation between the standard heat pump and a cold source, air source heat pump. So again, a lot of this criteria is specific to making sure that if someone wants to remove fossil fuel, that they can safely, comfortably, and confidently, have a system in their home that will operate, in the coldest temperatures. So just saying that, we feel comfortable if there is no manufacturer, provided data, it would put, I think, us in a difficult situation, would also put the municipal light plant in a difficult situation.
Let me, I really totally get the need for having a statewide standard. list of equipment that qualifies. But on the other hand, it's the case, isn't it, that every MLP's sort of schedule of rebates is different one for the next? And I wonder, I mean, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I know we have some other rebates for heat pumps other than a whole house rebate. And so, you know, Mike, I don't know, was the case being made that this customer should receive the whole house rebate? Or did they not receive the rebate for having? I mean, I think there's a rebate for putting in a heat pump, even if it's not whole house, right?
I don't think they received any rebate.
Yeah, and they received no rebate just because that system, again, had no pairing on that NEEP cold climate air source heat pump list there. And I will, kind of building off of Paxton's point about standards, we not just in the MLP space, we operate in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and we see hundreds, if not thousands, of installs a year happening. And a lot of the time, even cold climate air source heat pumps that are installed, customers see a rise in electricity bills. They see a rise in electricity consumption that's obviously corresponding there, and not only a worry, but almost a guarantee is that if there is no standard for heat pumps being installed, there will be customers won't know what they're kind of getting themselves into until they receive that first month's high electricity bill and then subsequent bills there as well. And to that point of if it's a phased install, the heat pump marketplace is moving so quickly that just because there is kind of a if they install a condenser and then in 3 or 4 years they want to install an air handler that eventually matches, that air handler might be out of the marketplace, and all of a sudden we're kind of left in that same situation where we aren't able to find, that contractor isn't able to provide a corresponding air handler. So all of a sudden we're kind of like ping-ponging back and forth air handler condenser upgrades, and that customer is never getting that true high efficient nature of heat pumps there. So it is I hear and respect that, Mike, that customers do need autonomy in the decision, and sometimes economically it makes sense to install a air handler and then a condenser or whatever that might look like. But there is a true concern, a real concern, that customers are going to get hit with very high electricity bills, and then your HMLP grid is going to be put under further strain if this is kind of a accepted process. And once it's accepted, neighbors hear about it, friends hear about it, and all of a sudden we have almost a storm of inefficient heat pumps going in. And I to a certain degree, it is on the HMLPs, the abodes, to work in coordination with one another to set that standard. So we are helping customers through this, what is a difficult and confusing transition, install the right things, and install the right systems there.
Yeah, so I'm looking at our rebate schedule now, and it's HMLP is offering $750 per ton up to $4,500 for customers who install a qualified cold climate heat pump system. And what we're saying here is that system includes whatever, if you are using an air handler, whatever air handler that is. So, you know, maybe if we're not going to make a change, maybe we should qualify that a little bit upfront for people, make that a little clearer. I guess it hadn't crossed my mind that I didn't know upfront that, well, yeah, your air handler is going to have to be on the list as well.
And
So maybe we should make that clear.
I will also say that there are some combinations on that NEEP database that allow for an existing air handler to be paired with a condenser and a coil. So that coil sits on the air handler, and that is what is the heating element in that system. And in those pairings, the manufacturers actually test that trio, let's call it, condenser, coil, air handler, to the lowest functioning air handler. So we can be certain, customers can be certain that we have a condenser coil pairing that is highly efficient and makes up for that lack of efficiency in that air handler. So that for this customer and for future customers, that is an option, and that's something that we can kind of continue to highlight and urge customers to consider if they want to keep that air handler there. And I think that does speak to the nature of heat pumps, that there are a lot of options for folks out there, and that sometimes it does necessitate that creativity by the contractor, the kind of acceptance by the customer to like let that contractor work and think through these ideas. But also, I think this is a great chance to again highlight those consultations with a BODE at no cost to that customer, that we help them put their motivations, their considerations to some language so that they can communicate what they want to that contractor. And then when they are at that receiving proposal stage, run that through that quote comparison tool so they are confident. We actually predict operating costs, we predict efficiency gains, or even sometimes efficiency losses, putting everything on the table so that customer knows what to expect, so it's not install and just kind of see how it goes type of scenario there. To that point, Laura, I think we can be more transparent, and Tom and Pax, we can work together to make sure that those criteria, those requirements are front
I
and
guess
center.
the defining for the customer what a heat pump system includes is a first start for
Yeah.
everybody.
I just wanted to highlight a couple things I think one of the HMLP employees who help you with rebates here, Christine, she reached out today and just said that, you know, a electrician had reached out and provided a HRI number and was asking whether it would be rebate eligible because the system only cools. So the HRI that was provided was for a cold climate air source heat pump that inherently can heat and cool. And what I'm basically trying to get to is that even licensed professionals and, you know, contractors, there's just improper information going around because some of the technology is newer. There's a lot of contractors out there that are moving from, you know, and experiencing a market shift where, you know, fossil fuel systems are you know, across the state, you know, and just region being phased out. Rebates are no longer available for, you know, even high efficiency gas systems. And it really comes down to, because there are options out there and there are, you know, effective solutions. But I do want to segue into just speaking to some of the concerns around cost again, because I do think it's very valuable, and it's something that would probably require a lot more consideration from the light plant here, as with any other light plants. But the project costs are significant. I can even look at the average cost per ton in Hingham territory, just from our, you know, data going through these projects, and it's more or less around $7,000 per ton. So I don't know how many tons this, you know, system or install would have been, but you know, you can say the average system might be like 3 tons, just throwing a number out there. So that's, you know, you're talking about a whole home project that's going to be $15,000 to $30,000. So you know, just when thinking, I think about, you know, customers who might get sticker shock, that's a big factor. So just you know, increasing rebates is not an easy thing, and I think you guys have already implemented some strategies by providing a whole home adder, and that's exactly the way we like to see, like, you know, things moving towards, because at the end of the day, a lot of these federal programs, funding, IRA funding, all these things are focusing on like overall decarbonization, and that really is tying in heat pumps and weatherization. And then you add weatherization to that, it's another, you know, $5,000, $10,000 easily, you know, depending on barriers. So these projects are not easy, but I think it should be, and it's clear that is a focus of the light plan if you guys are bringing us here. But I just want to really highlight all that.
Mhm. Okay, Tyler and Mike, anything else we'd like to pursue with the abode folks while we have them here?
Do we know how many people, Tom, that have not got rebates that came with good faith thinking that they would get a rebate?
My understanding that I don't want to say the customer's name, but this customer is one of the only one, if not the only one that I'm aware of. I've been in the MLP programs for 2 years now that has not received a rebate after installing a system. And I'm sure that there may be others
So
out there.
it's a small number.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue that I have is my neighbor has the same condenser from the same manufacturer as this ratepayer, this customer. Yet one was able to get a rebate and one was not.
And I think
That's the major issue I have.
at the end of the day, it's the rebates are for the incentivizing customers to install high efficient equipment. And the way that we see rebates is that it's that draw, it's that pull to the right place. And I think that is HMLP has been clear that we want to draw and pull customers to that high efficiency space, right? So if that customer chooses to keep the air handler in their home for economical, for what they believe is kind of the right reasons, then they are absolutely able to do that, welcome to do that. It's in our eyes, I think in MLPs across the state, they don't want to incentivize pull-in folks for the wrong reasons. And I would just kind of use this as an opportunity to say that no MLP programs that we work with and that I'm aware of allow for non-paired systems to go into. So I do think there's kind of a precedent that's been set, and we're happy to, again, continue this conversation. But I do think just knowing the industry, knowing how systems work, that's the best policy.
Just curious because I'm not sure the specifics of all the rebate programs that you guys have, but I know some MLPs have air conditioning rebates, like AC rebates, central AC, or things like that. So if this customer, is in a pinch or really needs it, that could be something. If there is a rebate out there, I think, this system obviously would operate effectively as an AC system, but just an idea.
Yeah, we
To
don't
be
have
clear,
a,
it's because their air handler is not being tested or qualified in a lab to be paired with the outside unit, because they're different manufacturers. That is essentially bringing the heat pump side of the efficiency down and disqualifying them. Okay.
Okay, I'm conscious of our time constraints today. Anything further that we'd like to bring up with abode while we have them here? Thank you so very much, Justin and Paxton, for joining us today. That was very
thanks, guys.
informative.
Appreciate your
Thanks.
time.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the
Yeah,
rest of your
no.
evening. Bye.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Laura, I can go another 20 minutes.
Okay, I can go exactly another 20 minutes. So the next item on the agenda is the moving forward with the sustainability plan study that we talked about a few months ago. Hopefully designing a study that would tell us exactly what the light plant has to do, to what needs to change, or what we have to do to get to the town's 2040 net zero emissions goal. And the first job was the staff was going to put together a list of questions that the study would address, and that was sent out to us, the list of questions. And I guess, Tom, are you looking for right now for feedback on the questions? Is that
Yeah, we were looking for feedback on, is this what the board is looking for?
yeah? I'll just start by saying I was very impressed with the questions. I think they're really nuts and bolts stuff that feel like we need to know the answers to those things, so I like them very much. I feel like, the part of it that is just gonna be hard or impossible is the whole question of supply and what's available on the market for us to meet that goal, and probably we just can't go very far down that road. But you did have some questions on that, so hopefully that would elicit, whatever an expert thinks is possible in terms of changing our supply. My question about it, the question I have is, do you feel like these questions, tell us what we need to do to address the ultimate situation of imagining that there's very little heating and cooling, very little heating done by natural gas and oil in Hingham? That, does this envision where HMLP is the primary supplier of fuel for heating going forward?
I think it addresses, probably a good deal of it, but again, the biggest thing is again, is the timing. How quickly does this happen?
Mm.
We look at our load growth over the last 5 years, and it's still flat. It's
It's all that efficiency.
yeah. Part of it is that, but the load growth is still flat. So,
Mhm.
people are going to heat pumps. Some people are putting heat pumps in, but staying on fossil fuels. Some people are putting them in for air conditioning because they get the rebate. But again, I guess my biggest thing is, how quickly does this happen? And I think that's the question every MLP has is, when are we going to see this? We haven't seen it happen yet.
What I sort of imagine is looking at kind of like an extended year, an extended capital plan that goes out further than the one we have now, that you can just keep moving and adjusting to address where you are today and where you expect to be tomorrow. Not that you would really actually know what we would need 10 or 15 years from now, but to have all the pieces of it on the plan somewhere so that you'll know what you need to do when the time comes. Does that make
So
sense?
a lot of the things we're doing today are addressing those needs. So, these, reconductoring circuits and things like that.
Mhm.
Those are going to address those needs in the future.
Mhm.
The question is, if that future load outweighs what we're doing today, and then we're talking about new circuits and things like that, bringing circuits out, from the station further to pick up load, things like that.
Mhm. I'm monopolizing the conversation,
Yeah,
Tyler and
I
Mike.
mean, the potential for new circuits, also maybe the potential for um, storage more storage inside the municipality, or, batteries, large scale battery storage to manage intermittency risk. And I didn't see it specifically, maybe I missed it on the questions, which I thought were great, by the way, but where it'd be interesting. I always like to see any study that deals in a transitioning supply portfolio to look at what the effect will be on rates or prices or cost of supply for the municipal utility. And to make sure that we're always trying to connect that back to how much, if our choices are changing our cost structure, we should just be aware of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes back to where are we getting it from? I mean, I know the wind is coming, but at what price? So what I'm hearing is that could come in as high as, $15 to $20 a megawatt. So that's a huge impact depending on how much of that we're moving to. I mean, our portfolio we're good in, out till 2035 the way we are. You know, we're gonna meet the 2030 goal. It's as we move beyond that and what's available. Again, that's a huge unknown at this point. You know, is wind gonna be the answer? Is small nuclear? Or is there gonna be something else, you know? Is it fusion that comes along in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, the only thing I can say with certainty is that, you know, whatever plan we come up with is probably not going to be what actually happens,
Yeah.
or we're going to be wrong somehow, but we just
Yeah.
have to be comfortable with that.
And the only thing I can say for certain is that fusion is at least 20 years out, just as it has been for the last 50 years.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, yeah,
I don't see that changing.
yeah.
And in
Mike, did you
terms
have
of
some
load
thoughts?
growth, I mean, as more and more people adopt heat pumps and more people adopt electric vehicles, the load growth is going to go up.
Yeah.
Others are seeing that already. You know, once we have our AMI meters, we can get an idea of, you know, people that are using electric vehicles and just how much more power they're using. Same goes with heat pumps. We can look at individual households and extrapolate forward to what our load growth is going to be.
You would have thought by now we would have started to see some of that growth. But again, when we look back at,
I mean, how much is efficiency? I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah.
insulation being going in.
yeah,
You know, it's possible that the early adopters on the heat pumps are also solar owners, because those are the kinds of people.
Behind the
And
meter.
so, yeah, so, you know, we cooled with HMLP in the summer, and our electric bill was $8.30. So that, you know, if people are putting in solar with their heat pumps, then they're gonna meet some, at least, especially in the summer, they're gonna meet some of their need that way. But eventually, I think in the end, we'll have more heat pump adopters than solar adopters, and that's when the change may come.
yeah.
But
No,
let me
you-
ask you, Tom, do you feel like I proposed this study? Do you feel that it would be a valuable thing to do now, or is it premature based on what we're able to know?
I personally think it's a little premature, but I guess, you know, starting to develop a plan for the future is always a good thing.
What do other members of the board think?
I think starting is a good idea, limiting how much or how deep you dig. But we can also always go back and review and revise it on an annual basis and add more data points and discuss it again. But it's a great start.
Tyler, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what sort of decisions that this study might drive in the near term and weigh the benefits against the costs for doing the study based upon that.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if, I mean, like I said, the questions impressed me with how nuts and bolts they were. And I don't have the technical knowledge to look at them and say, well, this is speculative, you know, even if we got an answer on this question, it could so easily change in the future. Maybe we don't want to answer this question now. I don't have the ability to do that, but I wondered if, Tom, would there be, if you feel if you feel this is premature, are there pieces of the questions that you asked that you feel like, well, no, this particular piece of it, we do need to start thinking about right away? And pull out the ones that are speculative or that feel premature, and focus on the ones that you feel like might actually give us some guidance in the next 5 years. Is that doable?
I think that's doable. I think we could again, we meet again as a group and talk about, you know, the things that we really need to look at in the short term
Mhm.
and how they affect us.
Okay. How does that sound? Talk a little bit more about really needed in the, by short term, I'm thinking 5 years. I don't know. I feel like projecting out beyond that is too hard. So what are the questions we need to answer in the next 5 years? If we focused on that, we might come up with a different study design.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that. We are running out of time quickly. We just need to do a couple of things. We need to approve our meeting minutes of September 10th. I hope you guys did you have an opportunity to review them? Because they came in a little
Yes.
late. Okay.
Yep.
I had one question. One thing. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, I meant to have it up. Here we go. I just wanted to make one change on, it's on page 3, the middle, next to the last paragraph. It says Ms. Burns noted there doesn't seem to be a specific formula for calculating the HMLP pilot payment. I think I may have spoken unartfully. I think what I meant to say, there doesn't seem to be a specific justification for the method that we've chosen for calculating it. That was the moment when Joan informed us what the justification was, but maybe we could change that too, because I know there's a formula, but the reason for the formula was what was missing at that point. Does anybody else have any change they'd like to make? Nope. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that one change made.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Tyler,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Laura, aye. Thank you. So I wonder if we can postpone discussion of the financials and updates unless there's something urgent, Tom, that you need to bring to our attention.
The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention was the PCA was moved to 0 for as of this month, so we're gonna be watching the 8%, the 8% return.
The
over
highly
next-
vigilant ratepayer in my home drew my attention to that. So I was glad that you had explained to me why we were doing that, so that I could explain that. Thank you. I don't know how many other highly vigilant ratepayers there are, but there are probably some. So
Yeah,
thanks.
I don't think we heard from anyone. And then the only other thing, maybe for next month is to look at the income adjusted rate, whether we want to change that again.
Yeah.
We said we
Well,
would
that's,
look at that.
yeah, that's not on the agenda today, though, so we'll have to
Right,
do that
yep.
at the next meeting for sure. Just quickly, we're on the transmission line project. Do we bid fair to submit this to the siting board? Soon?
It's with Eversource, so it came back to us. We made the changes that Eversource requested. And it's back with Eversource. We hope to have it back shortly. Once it comes back, as long as there are no additional changes, we'll be filing with the siting board. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Great, and maybe we could look at the financials together with the next month financials, unless there's something that we should be that is out of the ordinary that we should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Maybe we
I
could do
mean,
that.
our net income for last month was $1 million, 1.1. So, we had a strong month in August.
Mhm.
So our energy costs were down, expenses were in line.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough for me. Okay, I think that is the end of our agenda for today. Thanks, everybody, and have a good evening. I'll
You as
entertain a
well.
motion to adjourn.
So
So-
moved.
Okay,
Second.
I know there was a motion and a second, so all in favor, Mike,
Aye.
Tyler,
Aye.
Laura, aye. Thanks very much.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
Thank you.
night. Take care.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks.